This is the Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm reviewing and commenting on the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi, and we're reviewing right now Talk 28, the first half of it, talking about practice and tendencies. First, Ramana's words and the question. The devotee asks, are there any aids to concentration and casting off distractions? Ramana says, physically, the digestive and other organs are kept free from irritation. Therefore, food is regulated in both quantity and quality. Mentally, take interest in one thing and fix the mind on it. Let such interest be all-absorbing to the exclusion of everything else. This is dispassion, vairagya, and concentration. God or mantra may be chosen. The mind gains strength to grasp the subtle and merge into it. Then the discussion continues with the disciple saying, distractions result from inherited tendencies. Can they be cast off too? Maharshi says, many have done so. Believe it. They did so because they believed they could. Vasanas, predispositions, can be obliterated. It's done by concentration on that which is free from vasanas and yet is their core. Now, dialogues in this talk continue about practice and tendencies, the habits that stand in our way. When I was attending satsang with Nome, most dialogues were about practice. For serious seekers, this is vital. They might say, I know where I want to go, teacher. Please help me get there. They knew the direction of practice by being with and listening to Nome. We were with a teacher that had abandoned personal self, thus the name of Nome. Ramana starts with the basics. Calm the body and find your way to dive in with a focus for practice. Ramana talks about sattvic food, food that does not irritate or excite the body. For me, this was making life choices that led me towards the sense of inner peace. You have to have this in order to dive deep. Otherwise, your mind will be too active and you will rarely get deep. This includes what you choose to do during your day and for recreation. If your activities get you excited, will you be able to find calm for meditation? If activities dull your mind, will you have the sharp focus and concentration you need to quiet the mind? You make many choices every day. Notice the cycle. Notice what is going on and find ways to choose inner peace. This is a big factor for inquiry. Without inner peace, progress will be slow and halting. What you put into this body influences. The ideas you put into your mind influence it even more. Thoughts rise and fall on their own. You change what you pay attention to by what you are looking for. A thought has only the power you give it with this attention. You create a kind of reality for yourself with the thoughts that you pay attention to. So choose peace. Ramana says mentally take interest in one thing and fix the mind on it. I don't think it matters much what the focus is, as long as it is outside your ego idea of yourself, some place from which you can stand and look back at this self-identified separate being. Focus is needed, though, to restrain wandering attention. There's an example used in India where they're familiar with elephants. They say an elephant's trunk, if unrestrained, will wander here and there, exploring, touching, feeling everything around him. If you give it something to carry in its trunk, though, the trunk is stilled, quietly carrying its load. In mindfulness meditation, watching and feeling the breath is used in this way as an anchor, some load for the mind to carry. In inquiry, the quest to really know yourself takes over. You can also focus on a phrase or sound to trigger the internal investigation, whether aloud or silent. The more internal, though, the greater the power. You can be focused on a higher power or a person, especially one that exemplifies your practice. With this practice, it might be Ramana or Shiva or Nome. Focus on something that gets you past the limits imposed by your ego idea. Ego limits are just imagined anyway. Having these limits limit you is like building a fence around yourself and then crying because you can't get out. Then the dialogue moved to tendencies, vasanas. These are mental habits that create our seeming reality. Repeated ideas that make up our waking state, that make up who we think we are. The first vasana is the tendency to identify as this person, this individual identity. These tendencies extend through what we choose to do, to eat, the people we seek out, the experiences we want to have. They even extend to things like liking chocolate. These tendencies form unconscious choices that we make all the time. Nome showed us the tendencies, the vasanas, come from two things. The first is a misidentification. The second is confusion with this source of happiness. These ideas provide means to weaken and dissolve these tendencies. First, it starts with inquiry when you notice a tendency. Is this who I am? Look to the base idea on which the tendency is constructed. Often, this is the idea, I am this body. Are you a body? Or are you the knower of the body? Sometimes it is, I am a thinking mind. Are you a thinking mind or the knower of the mind? If this tendency is not actually for you, then what power does it really have? Next is the exploration into the source of happiness. Where does happiness actually come from? Does the happiness we seek from externals like objects and experiences and people, is that where it comes? We get temporary happiness when we get something we desire. It's fleeting though, it doesn't last. Or is the happiness we seek, does it come from within ourselves? This happiness, you will notice, is always there. So, is happiness from the outside or the inside? As you discover the internal source of happiness that is always present, the seeking of happiness from outside weakens and is finally extinguished. What drives this tendency then? What's going to happen to it? It'll dissolve. Now we listen to my teacher uh, from a dialogue, Liberation from Tendencies of the Mind. Let me bring it up.
And it's probably not a case of just the random wandering of your mind, but it tends to wander towards the same ideas, the same tendencies again and again. So, being that you're a seeker who's ardent for liberation and persevering and inquiring, etc., all those ideas you mentioned before, since you can claim those as your identity for the time being, you're well endowed to address the tendencies. You address them through deep inquiry and get to their very root. If you weren't seeking liberation from the imagined bondage, there'd be no point to addressing the tendencies. You would equate them with life, but you can't do that anymore, can you? A tendency remains for you only so long as you believe it. Your belief, your emphasis, gives it its solidity and its repetitive occurrence. So examine your mind, observe the tendencies that appear in it, the vasanas, and determine what definitions of yourself are at the root of that. Perceiving those definitions, then inquire to determine whether those are true definitions or merely delusion. If you can see delusion as delusion, with any tendency, it's over. It is only so long as you take some bit of delusion as if it were, you mistake it to be real knowledge, that it's saying something about you, about what is true, that it seems to survive. Be certain that when you examine a tendency, you actually examine the tendency and not something that is superfluous or even helpful. For example, I have never seen anyone hurt by having the sense about themselves that they're an intense yogi striving for liberation. I haven't seen any examples of anyone bound by that. That they're limited, body-identified individuals caught up in their own personal desires and fears. That I've seen some difficulties with. So which one do you think you should address? Which continuity are you missing? Whether active or inactive with the body, you carry with you the definition, the sense of identity. At the very core of that is the continuous sense of existence. That's all right. What you add to that existence, be very careful about. If inquiry becomes for you not just the seated posture in meditation, and not just a stream of thought, but comes as the deep, ongoing wondering about your real nature, that is, it consists of knowledge, it will be continuous. You carry with you, regardless of circumstances, your sense of identity. What is your sense of identity? What makes it up? You can be discerning that all the time. With a practice at this depth, activities of the body, circumstances it's in, etc., don't mean anything. They represent no change. If the mind is pursuing some object of desire, find out, why do you desire it? The why will always be rooted, the reason will always be rooted in what you regard as yourself. Find out if what you regard as yourself is the same thing as your actual existence. If it's an add-on, then subtract off. The tendencies are self-generated. They're not caused by other things. So you are free to be free of them. The tendencies do not maintain themselves. They have neither existence nor power of their own. Your belief makes them appear and sustains them. Now, if you would trace the belief to its origin, that is back to yourself, the tendencies would vanish. That is traced back from what you think you are to what you truly are.
And now we will take a few minutes to inquire, calm yourself, take a long breath in, feel your breathing, make a long exhale, and notice that you exist, and you know that you exist. You don't have to think about it or feel it, you just know. Now, with knowledge this deep, deeper than the mind and deeper than the senses, investigate within yourself, inquire. What tendencies can you notice? How about the tendency to think I am this individual? Am I this individual? Who am I really? The individual comes and goes. Something doesn't come and go. Am I this individual? Now let's investigate happiness. Where does happiness really come from? Is it from the outside, from external sources? Or is it from within? Happiness from external things is fleeting, it doesn't last. The happiness that rises from within is always there. It's there when your mind is quiet. Can you find it now? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? I exist. I know that I exist. What exists? Who am I? All right. Now a short chant. Om
Shanti.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Comments, questions?
I have an observation with tendencies, especially ones that seem to give me a negative feedback. Like, why would I want to do that?
Uh-huh.
And this is not my term, but Eric Byrne, the psychiatrist, talked about uh, the feedback you're getting, the what's in it for me. The payoff is what he called it.
Mm-hmm.
And to look at those things and say, I wouldn't do it unless there's a payoff. What's that payoff? Ultimately, it seems to be it is the search for happiness, but it can be a very perverse way of
Oh,
doing it.
yes, yes, yes.
So that's an intermediate step for me, you know, to get to, okay, you're really seeking happiness, but in the meantime, maybe sweet revenge is what you're enjoying as your payoff, you
Uh-huh.
know, or whatever kind of negative.
That that's a good point. A friend of mine who was a martial arts teacher in New York, he said those thugs, they're just trying to find a friend.
Yeah. So it's useful to unravel it a little bit and
Yes, yes,
see what's really going on.
yes.
It makes it easier to dispose of it.
Right. Well, if you can bring it into consciousness, then it's easier to dissolve it.
Yeah.
It looks like you're ready to say something, Richard.
I was remembering something my first spiritual teacher had mentioned about happiness and how you think you're going to find happiness outside. And when you get the thing you're looking for, it's not even the thing that brings you happiness, but it's the absence of that desire anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a peace about it. And like was what was said, just to remain in that peace, which is a peace that really belongs to no one.
Yes. It's
Just that
just there.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, if we are quiet enough to notice it.
Right. And like these teachings are like, this isn't something you're going to gain, you're going to lose. You're going
Yes.
to lose that individuality, that separation,
Yes.
and then welcome home.
Yes. Now, I also appreciate what Nome teaches about it. I really have not heard this elsewhere besides Nome. The details, I've elsewhere heard the connection between the vasanas and your self-identity. I haven't heard the connection between the misidentification and the source of happiness. And I think that is a really useful avenue for investigation when you really have understand the source of happiness is from within, then this dispassion comes naturally from that. It's not an effort. It's just you're following, Nomi said, what you love instead of what you like.
Yeah.
And I appreciate those easy ideas because somehow they will sink into this dense mind so eventually. Anyway, thank you for joining us today and have good meditations, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.